We are.
Penn State.
We are.
Penn State.
We are.
Penn State.
you know, that's the whole interview, B.
I know. We're done.
That's literally all I wanted you to do. You got to know last year and all the preceding year when the Penn State men's lacrosse stuff comes on, the football, I always can count on you posting and doing something, and I just love it so much.
Yeah,
so.
We now found the local Penn State bar down in
Where
Fort
is that?
Lauderdale. It's the Parrot, and it's awesome.
Do you know who used to own the Parrot?
Who?
My cousin's husband. Yeah, the Bill Thies family.
Wow.
Yeah, the Thies family is like a 5-generation Fort Lauderdale family. They used to own all the Miller distributorships from Stewart down to Key West.
Oh, okay.
And big time Fort Lauderdale family. And the Parrot was where they hung out.
It's awesome. It's so great now to go and have a place that you're around, like your Penn State community. I will say I'm confused why Yingling is not on draft there, though.
It would make sense if they had it, right?
I remember pitchers for like $250 at Penn State.
That's so awesome. So one of the things that I just wanted to talk about before we get started is how did you pick Penn State and how did you end up there?
Oh, it's a funny story. I thought that I wanted to go to a school in the South. I mean, Florida State was my number one.
Really?
My parents were not ready to send me that far away because I grew up in Maryland, in Washington, D.C. area. And my brother, he's 6 years older than I am. He, at one point, was being recruited to kick for Penn State.
Really?
And he turned it down. And he said that was one of his biggest regrets, was not going to Penn State. Wow. He ended up at West Virginia, which was great.
Still great school.
Yeah. And he loved it. But that kind of stuck with me. And when I had the opportunity and I got accepted at Penn State, I was all in.
Where did you live when you were a freshman?
Oh, well, see, freshman, I was Altoona for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was in Spruce Hall, and then went senior year up at University Park, and that was big condo life.
Holy
condo
cow.
and apartments.
Were you in the giant one right down on Atherton or whatever?
No, I stayed a little farther off on Viro Boulevard in some apartments there. I had to take the bus into campus, which was good because that kept me from getting parking tickets.
Oh my God, I have so many. It was crazy. Finally, because all the lacrosse guys, they either lived at Beta or Fiji. And so I'd try and sneak in there. And then finally they're like, Elvis, don't park here anymore. And then the tickets started. And then,
my parents still love to talk about it. Like 20 plus years and they're still talking about it.
My parents don't like to talk about my experience that much. All right. So one of the things that I think, this show is really about for me is not only the incredible work that Blue Tide Marine is doing in the Bahamas right now, and we'll get to that, but more importantly, it's your experience and your incredible commitment to Mike, my brother and
my boyfriend.
Yeah, your boyfriend from the time you guys were 16. And Mike served at the highest levels in the SEAL teams, and was one of the most revered men in the entire community, hands down. His father was one of the original members of JSOC, and I mean, just this incredible dedication to our country and our service. And one of the things that I got really fired up about was the fact that I did have an opportunity to talk to you about what that was like.
Right.
And for the length and period of time to love somebody that, that the job is essentially the number one. It comes first. And I can't wait to just hear a little bit about that. But before we get in it, can you describe what Mike was like at 16?
Oh my gosh. So he was not the same person that he is now. And, he will tease me. If you ask him when we first met, he will tell you that he met me in 7th grade. I met him in 10th grade. Like, that's what he says.
Because you blew him off, didn't you?
No, I didn't blow him off. We never had any classes. We did have homeroom. I do remember meeting him like quickly. He was sitting behind me in like 7th grade. And that's kind of how we met. But he was so shy. so shy. And it's funny because he's such a people person now.
Yeah.
Like, that is who he is. He loves to talk to people. He loves to, I mean, he's a negotiator. But he was not a talker in high school. At all, huh? We had Spanish together, and that's when I really first, was like, oh, this guy.
He's kind of cute.
Yeah, look at him. And I would try to talk to him, and I'd say, hi, how are you? And he's like, fine. And he like wouldn't make eye contact. He was very shy. But that being said, he was still the same person in the sense of determination and commitment.
Wow.
So he was a wrestler. He was a football player. Yeah. His dad, was a Marine. And, he just had this level of dedication that I had not seen in somebody my own age, a guy my own age.
Well, it
just
doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so rare that we see kids that are just driven in terms of those core values, right?
Yeah.
The integrity, the commitment, the loyalty.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Mike's always had that.
He has.
When was it tough for him? Because obviously, you have this incredible personality. You're a giant people person. You are just exude confidence. Was that tough for him because of how you were?
I don't think so. I think, it sounds cliche, but we were the perfect balance of the shy, quiet person and the really loud, cheerleader girl. We really were a perfect balance. But it's funny because now that I've been out of television for a number of years, our roles are really reversed.
Right.
He is very much the personality.
Wow.
He is very much, the walk into a room and introduce himself to somebody, and I'm a little bit more reserved. So our balance has shifted. But I don't think it was hard for him. I just think we really we were the yin and yang that really fit together.
Well, tell me about, so now you're in this very deep-rooted relationship, and I'm assuming that the mm-hmm. idea of spending your lives together came on very quickly. Mm-hmm. But then he joins the military, and you said, well, I want to go pursue this dream of journalism. Will you tell us about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. Really, I didn't know what a Navy SEAL was until I met Mike,
right.
Until he knew that that's what he had wanted to do and what he had wanted to pursue. He went to a year at Mizzou in mm-hmm. Missouri because, he promised his mom he would go see if anything else struck an interest. But that Christmas break, he enlisted, right. Delayed enlistment. So, we were already separated after high school. Everybody told us, high school relationships don't work.
Right.
You might as well. And yeah, we had our ups and downs. We did not, we were not this like perfect relationship throughout.
That's cool that you say that.
Yeah, no. I mean, we dated other people. We broke up. We got back together. When he went to, when he finally went into the Navy, that's when we really recommitted back to each other. And so I would say that was between sophomore and junior year mm-hmm. of college for me. And, I think that's when everything really, truly got serious. And we had to see, how we were going to pursue this life together. When I'm in Pennsylvania, he was going off to, training and then buds. And then, trying to figure out where we would go. And I'll never forget the phone call, when you guys get your command mm-hmm. out of buds and where you're going. And he was like, I'm going to Hawaii. I was like, oh, okay, that's a challenge. At the time I was interning at NBC4 in Washington, D.C. and like loving it, killing it, had awesome opportunities to do some, field producing on some big stories. And, I had to make a decision on what was going to be my path after
right.
that. I think when you
can I jump in real quick? Because I think it's just fascinating to me. It's to have that spark of journalism so early in your life mm-hmm. and to know that that's the direction. Where did that come from?
I have to thank my mom for that. So
growing up, hoping you were going to talk about your mom.
Growing up in DC, local news is national news. Local news is international news. So you're around it all the time. And the NBC affiliate there had something called Teen TV, and they were like, hey, who wants to try out? So my mom's like, I think you should do it. And I'm like, okay. I had done a couple of things with the high school program, but, it wasn't what I was thinking was going to be my life. And tried out, got to do a small piece on like summer heat,
Yeah,
a flip piece, and then from there they invited me to work on one of their teen TV specials.
Oh, wow.
And you know what, this was 1993, 94, and we were already doing specials about violence in schools. Right? Because
really?
it was DC. So,
that's true.
You know,
the DC violence there
so
back then.
we were already doing specials on that. And the people I met when I was working on that special made me realize that I had a passion for telling stories that may not otherwise be told.
Okay.
So that's where it came from. And I remember telling the photographer that I was working with, I'm a junior in high school, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to college for. And he's like, why?
Yeah. Why would you ever want these hours? This frustration.
Why? Yeah, but it was just, the need to meet people and tell their stories.
And that came from your mom, you said?
She was the one that encouraged me to try out for that, and I would not have ever found that calling if it wasn't for her encouraging me to do that.
What about your mom? Because your mom, and I've never met her, and what about her was so amazing and so incredible for you?
She was breaking glass ceilings before that was even a phrase. I mean, she literally 75 years old, just retired in July.
Wow.
So she has worked for IBM for 25 years, then Lockheed Martin and L3.
Whoa.
And so she has been in it. And one of the things that I always think was so important when I was growing up is she never was like, okay, we have a corporate dinner party coming over, you guys stay upstairs. We were expected to be downstairs with all of these adults having meaningful conversation. And I thank her so much for that, because it put me on a great path to be able to have conversation, to want to learn so that I could hold these conversations with people. And man, it really, that's the foundation of where my career went.
Well, it's so, with our, I've got 4 daughters now, and you're always trying to figure out, and thank God Jonna is this wonderfully strong, confident woman. But where do you guide young girls for those influences? And so often I think a lot of those really beautiful influences come from just, they're right in front of you.
Yeah.
And being able to point to say, hey, do you see that behavior? That's good behavior.
Yeah. You just have to be around the right people.
Right.
And you have to understand that your friends are the people that your kids are looking up to. The people that they see you around, they think that's the way they're supposed to be. You just have to be so particular about who you're spending your time with.
Oh my gosh. And it ain't easy with a bunch of team guys all around all the time. Holy good God.
Well, I will say team guys are great guys. Team guys are amazing guys. And sometimes you got to deal with a little language and a little drinking, but you're going to have to deal with that when you're 21 and hopefully not younger. Anyways, right?
Exactly.
So she's being prepared for the real world. So is my son. That's the way I look at it that way.
I love it. And I love the idea about, hey, this is what it means to be sophisticated. This is what it means to, be able to maneuver through society with a certain distinction or a certain class about you. And I love that influence played such a big role in you. Were you nervous about moving into journalism, and especially because Penn State's journalism program is one of the best in the country? Was it intimidating?
So I think this was one of the things that just came very naturally to me, and I'm so thankful for that. I was nervous the first time I went on live, for sure.
I bet.
Oh, it was
when was
disastrous.
No, come on,
it was. So it was in Norfolk, and I was stepping on as a traffic reporter after being a producer for many years. And Patrick Rocky, one of my good friends, still a meteorologist in Norfolk at the CBS affiliate WTKR, and he tosses to me and says, time to take a look at the traffic with Bianca. And I'm like, thanks, Bianca. I'm like, what? Oh, it just,
the nerves,
you're so
man.
nervous.
Oh, I know.
And, I thanked myself and then moved on with traffic. And, the rest is history. And then from there, I, did pretty well. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. When you're at Penn State, one of the amazing things that I think Penn State offers is the diversity, right? With 70,000 kids, you know, and the intensity of all the different things going on all the time around campus, it really creates a lot of opportunity for growth. Did you know, coming from DC, for obviously, and because the influences from your mother and your family, you were worldly as it was. But when you got there, did you feel a whole new level of growth because of the opportunities there?
Oh my goodness, yes. And you know, like I said, I started at Altoona, so it was like extended high school for a little bit, where it was a very small campus, which was good for me. I had to transition that way. But once I got to, you know, main campus in University Park, it was like a whole other level for me. The professors had such an incredible influence on me. One's still there, Professor Sanchez. He's amazing.
Awesome.
You know, related to him right away, and he was the broadcast journalism teacher. So, you know, he was amazing, and we had opportunities to travel through that program. And one of the opportunities I will never forget is we all got to one of those big fleet vans. I mean, smushed in there, my entire broadcast journalism class. And we went down to St. Helena's Island in South Carolina for the Gullah Festival.
Okay.
And talk about being exposed to a whole other culture. I mean, it was, you know, their town was rooted in slavery and then escaping. And just learning about that and being able to tell that story was just, it had a big impact.
I bet, you know, because one of the things, though, you know, even though Penn State is filled with all these incredible opportunities and all these great influences, it's still in the middle of nowhere. You know, I mean, you drive 10 minutes off campus and the Amish guy in the cart's driving by, and you're like, what the, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember that was a little culture shock for me, but it still was, you know, I remember being in my first, you know, philosophy classes and my first art history classes, and I'm like, oh my God, I began to realize the size of the world. Right.
Yeah.
And that was a unique thing. And that somehow, some way, I had to go find my way in that world.
Awesome. Yeah. So that influenced where you went after that.
It had a huge, a profound impact for me. Did you ever do any charity work in college? Did you ever kind of come outside of that spectrum of, all right, I'm just there for journalism? And
yeah, no. So I got to participate in Thon. You know, the biggest philanthropic, you know, university-based program. Yeah. So, that was amazing. So,
can you tell our listeners a little bit about it?
So Thon is, you know, the weekend-long dance party where you put yourself into, you know, a state of just, and it sounds silly talking to probably a bunch of team guys about like, oh, I danced for a whole weekend and I was so tired. But really it is, you know, to bring attention to childhood cancers and you know, make sure that, you know, they're getting the funds that they need to help treat these beautiful, wonderful children that join us in Thon.
That was my favorite part about it, when you'd see the kids up there and they'd participate in the smiles on their faces, and it always seemed to just breathe so much more life into the weekend, right?
It did.
Yeah,
it did.
Unbelievable.
When you were tired and they came in, you weren't tired anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, man, that's such a great thing that you were part of that.
Yeah.
All right, so you finish. Obviously now Mike's in Hawaii. You're finishing. Was it at that moment you're like, all right, I'm going and I'm gonna try and do it out there, or what happened in that transitional phase?
So, you know, poor Mike got the pressure then. You know, in all honesty, it was like, I can't just move to Hawaii. You know, I've got this great job here. And so, you know, he surprised me and he asked me to marry him, and I obviously said yes.
Yeah.
And
hell, if Mike asked me to marry him, I'd marry him.
I think a lot of people would. You know, he's that guy. He's awesome.
But so are you, B. I want to tell you that
thanks.
he would never have been able to do what he did without you. And I can attest to, you know, as you're a young frogman just completing buds and you're in STT, and you know we had 72 guys in our class, and you know, in the ridiculousness that we talk about, and then there's these select few that are talking about very focused futures, in particular him talking about you all the time, and that was always just a remarkable thing. You guys in the Sandoval's for me were just such an inspiration.
I'm lucky, and you know he's very appreciative. He's and that's probably one of the reasons why we're still together.
Yeah.
It's because he never failed to say thank you for being there when I needed you, or, you know, any of that. But, you know, when we did make that decision to get married, and, you know, I went to go pursue another job in Hawaii, he was still gone a ton. I think my first year in Hawaii, if you put the days together, he was there for like 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. He did sniper school and stuff like that at that time.
That's when those guys are getting every school on the planet. Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
And, you know, SDV, he was in the water all the time. And,
Oh.
well, yeah. And now look, he's in the water all the time.
Yeah.
But back then, I couldn't get him to go teach me how to scuba or take a
Nothing,
class with me.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd talk about it and you'd start shaking, right?
Yeah. But, you know, at that point, it became very clear that in order to survive as a married couple, we had to have the understanding that he had his life and I had my life, and then we were lucky enough to have a life together every now and then.
Right.
We didn't have kids then.
Explain that. How do you talk about that? How do you communicate that to each other at the ages that you were at?
Oh gosh, I mean, you know, I don't even know if we really said that in conversation. You know, I think it was just an understanding, and that comes from us being, you know, very similar in the sense that we both had big goals, and we knew that we wanted to achieve them, and we knew that we needed the support of each other to do that. And
Wow.
I don't even think it was a conversation where we sat down and said, okay, so here's how this is going to work. It just, you know.
It just was present as is.
Yeah.
Do you attribute that to how you guys were raised, the type of people you are, that because it's very difficult, I think, nowadays for, you know, there's so much emphasis on verbal communication that a lot of times people are missing those nonverbal things that are attributable to our character and the support of that character and what that can do for a relationship.
Oh, it's that whole love language thing.
Right?
Yeah, you
Holy
know,
cow.
the whole love language
Yeah.
thing. And, you know, we know ours. We didn't know it back then. But, you know, I think, yes, I think part of it was, you know, we were young, so we were naive. We didn't think we had to have conversations about stuff like that. Thankfully, it worked out. I think like any other marriage, you know, my favorite phrase is riding the bike down the hill and building the bike while you're doing it, you know? Like, you're just, any other marriage, you're figuring it out as you go along. It's just, gosh, we were 22.
We could use a training wheel back there right now.
Yeah. It's, you know, you know, we were just really young while we were doing it. And I think it was, you know, for us, it worked out because we were able to just kind of go, okay, you know?
Well, I always love, you know, when I get to see you guys post those marriage pictures with him and his blues, and you guys, you look so young. I mean, we were just babies back then, right? And had no idea what was coming.
Yeah.
When 9/11 hit, because I know he had been, you know, had moved the transition and was going, you know, to the you know, I think we could call it the dark side in terms of the next level, but in terms of moving up to the highest level, you know, he's going through at that time. 9/11 happens. Do you remember that moment and what it was like for your relationship?
Oh yeah. So I mean, very clearly. So he had actually just, you know, done his quote unquote interview, and you know, he explained it to me as, hey babe, this is great. If it works out, I'm only going to be gone when the hits the fan. Yeah. And it was like, okay, so I think he had screened, got great news, you know, we were really proud of him. And then that morning, I was an early news producer, so I was up at 3 a.m. We were living in Hawaii still.
Right.
I was up at 3 a.m. and my mom had called me, and I thought she was calling about my grandfather because he had been in hospice for a while. And so that's what I expected to hear. I was like, oh, here we go. And then I pick up the phone, I talk to her, and she's like, turn on the TV. And my mind was, I saw it, and it was just like, what?
Yes. Yeah.
There's no way. Well, this isn't real. This isn't whatever. And then the next thing, you know, Mike's finally up because I get him up, and then we look at each other like, ugh.
This is happening.
The hit the fan.
Yep.
You know, and so, you know, we had an understanding that once he got there and he went through, you know, the first few months, that it was real. And that tempo, man, it picked up.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the great challenges is anytime you're driven by servitude, right? And whether you're serving people information or you're serving the country, there's this level of drive in that, that when it really gets intense, you get better.
Oh, absolutely.
And did you guys find that happen after that you just became better, not only together as a couple, but better in what you were doing with your lives?
Absolutely. I think, the call to serve is one thing, but then when you call, or your calling to serve happens in the middle of something like that, you have no choice but to grow. I mean, you're just thrown into it, and it's, sink or float, you're
for sure.
So, absolutely. And I think we did see that. I don't think that had to happen for us to achieve what we wanted to achieve.
Okay.
But
interesting. A war didn't need to happen for you guys to get to where you wanted to go.
No, I mean, he had gotten, that was his Mecca, that's where the command he wanted to be at, and he was accepted. That was before 9/11.
Yeah.
Did he become a better SEAL? Did he become a better leader? Absolutely.
You can't not become a better leader at that level. I guess that's not true. There are some guys that go there and the intensity is too much for them.
Right.
And they end up, either breaking or they spin out of control emotionally or whatever it might be. But, man, it just seemed like Mike began to just thrive there and really pick up steam.
Yeah. And, it was the community for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that guy. He is that, it's all about the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about the guys.
Yeah.
And for us, as a whole, it was community. And I have friends. I mean, I have friends from when he was in Bud still, but once you got there, it was just another level of needing to support each other, especially when the op tempo just increased and shot through the roof. And, you've got guys who are gone and then home and then gone and then home, and your friends are shifting with you. And, it was just a whole other level where community was the most important part of your life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When you got over, how long did it take you to find a news station, to get interviewed, to get going, and how long did that take? And what was that like for you in this crazy, chaotic change too?
So I was a little lost. I bet. I mean, and I talk about things are not easy, and I promised you I would be an open book. When we first got to Virginia, and he was in that first few months of being at the command, and I didn't have a job in TV. I had a great job. I was working for Linda Murray, Miss Olympia, at her gym.
Wow.
And I loved it. I mean, it was great. But I still knew I wasn't doing what I wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
And I was a little lost. He was so focused on, reaching his next level and being able to stay at the command and move on. We were not good. Oh, we were not good. It was hard.
Really hard.
There was not, even the nonverbal communication was gone. I mean, it was you, and part of it was just he was gone so much, and I was working early hours at the gym, but there was a lot of passing each other in the hallways of our tiny apartment without saying a word to each other.
Wow.
And his parents invited us out to Missouri for Thanksgiving, and it was like, we have to put on this facade of being happy and really, with it. And I knew I had to work. I was like, I can't get off. So, I'm just going to.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, well, I'll come out for the weekend. He drove out there, and I flew out over the weekend. And I say that the 18-hour drive back was the first moment where our marriage was saved.
Wow.
Because we were in a car for 18 hours.
And you had nothing else to do but to talk it out.
No option but to talk.
Wow. What was that conversation like, if I can ask? Not details, but just the weight of it.
I think it was really just like a vomit of emotions for both of us.
Right.
Of well, you don't understand what I'm going through. Well, you don't understand what I'm going through. And, just really for the first part of that, few months, actually sharing what was in our heads instead of just ignoring it. And in our hearts, really, led us to a point where we could move forward. And
it's interesting, I think, and I'm just learning this now, right? Is that there's such a not only therapeutic effect of openness, right, of vulnerability, But there's also an empowering component of that too, to say, hey, I'm really hurting and this is why. And to be okay enough to open up the spectrum of your own sensitivities, your own guilt, your own shames, and all, your own ego challenges. But it's funny, man. Those only happen in those times. But thank God you were able to go through that. And how did it change when you got back?
I think we were just more aware when we checked in with each other a lot more. I think checking in is like a huge thing.
Describe that.
It really sitting down. I mean, who really gets a chance to sit down anymore, right? So we learned to sit down and just look at each other in each other's eyes and ask each other questions.
Wow.
You know, and then along the way you find out your love language, right? And his is touch. So if I put my hand on his knee, mine's quality time. So even though we didn't know those two things at the time, that fostered, those good feelings that you're getting from that.
That's cool. That's really cool.
You check in with each other. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you, beyond how was your day kind of thing. We both learned that's maybe where we started to grow up. Right.
Well, yeah. And that's what happens when you discover this new way to communicate. Yeah. And in particular, I think with because obviously you guys are anchored within each other, right? And when that anchor is strong and secure, you can start really growing.
Right.
Is that where you started to see your abilities start to really improve and what ultimately got you as an anchor? Can you describe that pathway for us? Well,
I think, when we both knew, we again checked in and remembered that we needed each other's support, we could both grow and flourish, right? So a year after being in Virginia, I got a call about becoming, there was an opportunity to become an AP, an associate producer, which technically was a step down for me from what I was doing in Hawaii. Right. And it's that thing, you just go, okay.
Anything.
If I want to do this, I got to put in the work. I got to suck it up and do it, you know? So I stepped into that role, and then that led to the traffic reporting position. And then within a year of the traffic reporting position, I had an opportunity to audition for the morning anchor role, and that's when everything took off.
Describe that audition.
I'll never forget it.
I want to hear that because people, one of the greatest fears that people have is public speaking.
Right.
But you want to intensify that times a million, put a camera in front of your face, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people watching. It's a whole nother level of fear.
But it's opposite for me.
Is it really?
Isn't that wild?
Whoa.
I know that there's like 10 people that have to do anything with the production, right?
Yeah, right.
Whereas if I stand up in front of a bunch of people, it's like blah, blah, blah. I went back. My high school asked me to come back and speak at graduation, and that was like,
That's
what?
Cool.
And I was horrible. I was so bad.
Really?
Because it was
What'd
so
you do? What'd you do?
Like I had zero breath. I couldn't breathe. And our school, so the school that we graduated from, was a huge school, and so this was in Constitution Hall. So there I am standing in front of all these people and their parents at Constitution Hall, and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Did you feel like you were back in high school?
I felt like, no, it's, yes, because some of the teachers were still there, which was kind of like, ha, you thought I talked too much. Well, now look.
God, that's awesome.
But really, I kind of, it's one of those moments where you're like, you really are doubting yourself. You kind of feel like a fraud. You're like, why did they ask me to be here? I'm not that great. Like, but there are people who still do remember it and say things about it. And, the great part is that, Mike was with me, and that was his high school too.
Yeah.
And I got to talk about, the stuff that he's done. And it was a really proud moment, I think, for both of us.
How could it not be, right?
Yeah.
And you, it's so funny. I think another component of people that have a character based in service, right, is there's a ever-present sense of humility. Right. And it's not that, we're not confident or anything like that, but it's a sense of, hey, I'm doing this because it has to be done. And I'm a part of this because it has to be done. And, you know, when you become recognized for it at another level, in particular, I feel with kids, for me, that's, you know, I'll stand in front of 50 CEOs all day long, twice on Tuesdays, but I'm in front of 1,000 sixth graders and I'm nervous as hell, right? Because
they're judgy.
Oh my God. And also knowing, I'll never forget at Addison Meisner here right up the road where I went to grade school, we had the guy that the show Columbo was based on. And it was like, holy cow, that made an impact on me.
Yeah.
And you begin to recognize, wow, how I can, what I do and what I say can really move people to action. So as you now are an anchor on a morning show, you know, I mean, how many years in is Mike?
Oh gosh. Oh.
At that point, probably 8, 9 in?
Yeah.
Okay.
About that, yeah.
All right. So, you know, that's what, 3 years into the war on terror. It's starting to ramp up. It's starting to get heated. What was those moments? Because I remember when it first kicked off, it was like, you know, all right, this is going to be easy. It's going to be over soon. No big deal.
Yeah.
And then once Fallujah went down, everything kind of changed. And then for me, I think where everything really changed with Red Wings.
Me too.
Right? Describe that pivotal moment for you guys.
Well, I was on the morning show. So really, I would say.
And I just want to frame, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to frame this for our listeners. So you got to understand, B is in Virginia Beach, you know, second biggest Navy town in the country. You know, her husband's at the highest level. All her friends, all her community, her family is this community. So
So it that was a big game changer for me because I was on the morning show, and I would say this is the first time that like anything like this was being reported in real time, right? Before that, I feel like, you know, incidents like that you would find out about hours later.
Right.
This was happening in the middle of the show that I was anchoring.
Whoa.
And it was breaking news.
That's right. It came out first thing in the morning.
Yeah. So and I mean, right down to the like, we know this many are gone, and we know one person's still there.
Wow.
Like we were in the middle of it, reporting it live, breaking news, and as all these updates kept coming in, it was like, oh gosh, you know, the first thing that you do and think of in that situation is not like, oh, this is the information I have to get out. But when you are tied to that community, it's like, who was it?
Yeah.
That's the first thing, and your stomach drops.
Yep.
And so I remember going through that, and then it was just, you know, that was a very different experience, one that I never expected to have when that happened. So, and then I had the opportunity to, you know, interview Marcus when his book came out. And that was great. So
it was, for me, it was the big shift for the first time that our community where we weren't invincible.
Yeah.
We, you know, but prior to that, you know, we had lost a few guys, but they were the random thing, like, you know, Matt getting blown up at Tarnack Farms. That was just like, all right, he stepped on it. Or Neil, you know, in his event. I mean, all tragic, all horrific. But this one was like, man, this seems like a no-brainer, you know? You're flying in a big bus with 2 rotors, and you're just flying into an ambush and all this. And it's just like, whoa, well, we're not invincible. And I remember, you know, the aftermath of that they just kept coming.
Yeah.
And that's when it started, right? Yeah. What was the you know, it must have been a weird juxtaposition to, you know, be on, and every single casualty, every single incident you're having to report, and then you're coming home and now you're addressing it face to face. What was that like for you?
Well, it's I would say they were, you know, unlike, you know, Mike, who was very good at doing a job and then coming home and then, you know, not doing that job anymore. For me, I was never able to separate it. Yeah. Never.
Neither was I.
I was never able to separate the fact that I was on a news desk talking about people who were in my community and people who were my friends.
Yeah.
It was, and that was where I started to shift away from wanting to be in that position.
I bet.
I was able to turn it into things like, the Do My Military Job series that was able to share, what people are doing on a daily basis in their military jobs. And that was great, but that still was not enough to keep me from constantly thinking about my friends in my own community.
Was the straw that broke the camel's back, was that extortion for you?
It was.
And I've never been able to say I'm sorry for all that you lost, everybody you lost, and the pain that you guys went through. And I feel weird to ask you about it, but I also think, I was able to interview Dom Rosso, who,
right.
That's the major point in his life where his whole life shifted, and everybody else I know that was a part of that team and that group. They talk about it with such reverence as we should. It was the worst day in our unit's modern history.
Right.
What was it like for you?
That was hard, and I'll probably cry, but I remember, back in the pager days, right?
Yeah.
So I remember, I'd come home in between shows for dinner, and Mike's pager had gone off, and he was like, and I should say Obi, because not a lot of people probably have any idea, but his pager went off, and I remember him being like, "Oh, that's really weird." Like whatever the message was a different message than usual. And then I had gone back, and he remembers it differently, but I swear this is how it happened. But I had gone back to work. I did the 11 o'clock newscast, came home, and he was awake, and that's when we had known the extent of this incident.
Wow.
And it was hard because, with that many, you're like, again, who was it? And then you start going through your head with who's gone.
Yeah.
You start, the names start coming. And one of the hardest things I think for us is that, Mike was a part of that group before he shifted into his new role. And
those were his best friends. Those were his friends.
Those were his really good, tight friends and brothers.
Yeah.
And so that was a really hard, and it wasn't even just that day, right? Like you think about the numbers, and it was a month of memorials and just dealing with those emotions. And it was another very difficult time in our marriage. That's the second time where we had a hard time. I think just both of us dealing with the emotions, and, me wondering how some people are going to move on that were my friends.
Yeah.
And then explaining to my kids, that some of their friends had lost their fathers. And then for him, just dealing with just the massive weight of that emotion of losing those men. So I think that was another really hard time for us, marriage-wise.
How'd you guys work through it?
He was sleeping in the middle of the day because it was the day off of a memorial. And we actually had a random earthquake in Virginia.
What?
So I always say that, that at that point it took an act of God to literally make us talk again.
Yeah.
So, it was, did you feel that? Did you feel that? And then, it opened up conversation, and then, we worked through it. And again, I have to process how he's feeling. It's not just me feeling something, and obviously the weight of what he was dealing with was, a lot more than what I was dealing with. And I had to understand that. But it opened that conversation again. But the beautiful thing that came of that, if there was anything, was again, watching our community just embrace everybody that was left to deal with the unthinkable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. What's so amazing about people that I found is, and this is all over the world, this is not just confined to the Navy SEAL community or to Americans whatsoever, is that when catastrophe strikes, we see the best in the human condition. And it's really powerful. And we see it in places and in people we never dreamed we would see it, right? And so we experience this unbelievable catastrophic event in our community. Then all of a sudden, out of the ashes, people bond together and they lift each other up in these really unbelievable moments. What were some of the profound things that you took away from that, not only about yourself, but about the human condition itself?
Gosh, the first thing for me is like seeing sheer strength of some of the families that were left behind. That's the thing that sticks out the most. And, one of our friends, she actually had her husband's birthday party that was supposed to happen anyway.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it. Like she was trying so hard to, just be there for everybody, but everybody had to be there for her, and it was just, again, we talk about vulnerability and just allowing yourself to feel the emotions and then let the people embrace you that are there for that. The strength and the vulnerability that I saw that day will stick with me forever. And she continues to be this like
beacon, I bet.
Oh my gosh. A beacon of faith.
Yeah.
Her faith is incredible.
Wow.
She was pregnant at the time. So she, is the love for her children is incredible, and how she keeps the memory of their father in their lives is just, it's inspirational.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody should ever have to deal with that.
No.
But to deal with it with the grace that she has is amazing.
Yeah, I'm so blessed in my life. Jonna lost her husband back in the day, and to watch her with her children and to become that foundation of all things, right? And so you look at these women who've lost their husbands and to be able to continue and drive on and find new purpose and new meaning out of the catastrophe is one of the most inspiring things that I've ever seen in my entire life. Not only do all of you, have this profound sense of sacrifice that exists just within being married to someone who's gone all the time. And it's not like, they're out building a pipeline in China.
Right.
They're out going after bad people and doing bad things. And you never know. And so, and then for, that the ultimate tragedy to happen, to continue on and really, really thrive is impressive. It's one of the most admirable things that I've ever seen in my life.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So from these great lessons, right? Because, the best lessons we learn in our life are the hard lessons, right?
Yeah.
From these lessons, as now Mike's through this incredible career, you've built this amazing career. What was it like now all of a sudden where it's like, all right, I'm going to retire and I want to leave?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was ready. I mean, he was definitely ready. I think when it's time to step away. But he had some really cool opportunities in the last few years of his career. I had made the decision shortly after, extortion that I was done because I couldn't do that anymore.
Wow.
I just couldn't. I mean, I took a week off when that happened because I knew I had zero ability to sit on a news desk and talk about it.
Yeah.
So, when things became very public in the media, it was time for me to be done.
Okay.
I didn't want to walk that line anymore.
Right.
So I had already made that decision, and I started my transition out of TV and into corporate communications, I think 2 years before he retired.
Okay.
So we didn't do it all at once.
Right. Thank goodness. I would have been like, that's
Yeah.
number 3
No.
right there.
No, 3 did come up. Number 3 did come up, and a bowling alley saved that part. But
we get to hear that story, I hope?
Yeah,
Okay,
you
great.
But we had phased our transitions. So when he was ready, he was ready. He had this great opportunities in the past, the last few years of his career where he built relationships with some really great people, good friends, different capabilities. And, so he went right into this new business of theirs altogether right out of his retirement. So
wow,
he didn't
that's
have a lot
cool.
of time to idle, you know.
Well, that's what I was remarkable, because I remember being at the retirement, ceremony down in Fort Lauderdale when you guys, and I was so excited you guys were moving to Florida, and I was like, I had all these visions of us hanging out all the time and going to the Parrot and doing Penn State games and, going to kids' games and hanging out.
We're going to make it happen.
Yeah, if he stops working like he does, right? But he was like, no, man, I'm going to work on Monday or so, and he was like, I'm doing this thing. And I was like, don't we want to take like a couple months off?
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Was that hard?
No, I mean, yes, for me, yes.
Yeah.
Which leads to number 3.
Yeah.
It was hard. I mean, they work harder now than they did when they were in the Navy.
Well, that's being an entrepreneur.
You're an entrepreneur. Yeah. You're a business owner, and they went right to traveling. So, I think I had this like fairy tale idea of what retiring out of the Navy would look like. And it would be like, oh, my husband will walk in the door every day at 5:00 and I'll have a beautiful dinner waiting for him. And, we will have so much time together. And that's not how it happened.
Yeah.
And for me, I had to process that, and I did not process it very well.
Right.
And then on top of it, he did have, a lot of friends who needed, his help, and he's that guy. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to jump in when a guy needs me, I'm there.
Yep.
So he was doing a lot of that in his free time, which was great. I mean, he wants to help. But we were still not seeing a lot of him at home.
Yeah.
And, again, got a little tough, got a little ugly.
Yeah. Well, it's what people, I think what everybody has this, kind of illusion of what, special operations is. And it's this glorification of dedication and all this, whatever is in the books and the movies and all that stuff. But what they don't understand is the traumatic institutionalization of that behavioral commitment, right? Where it's like, unless I'm doing something for someone else, I'm not adhering to who I am, my identity.
Absolutely.
To the detriment most often of your family, right?
Right.
And it's the families that take the biggest brunt of all that.
And that's because, we were always there to support in those 20 years. We just knew that was our role, that was our job. And, I do say they do a pretty good job of transitioning, the person who was in the military out, but sometimes the family gets lost in that transition role.
Yeah.
And nobody tells
you never hear about that.
Don't
right?
expect it to be a certain way, because they don't know how they're going to process their transition. So you can't expect anything out of it for sure.
Yeah.
And just, again, you're learning how to deal with a new life and a new lifestyle. And sometimes you can now speak up
right.
and say, it's not the military sending you somewhere, right? You can now speak up and say, hey, I need you here for this.
So tell us about the bowling alley experience then.
So again, we got into a big argument, and I was like, my love language quality time. I was not getting it, and not even in retirement. So we got into a big blowout, and it was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was not a big person on threatening, change your lifestyle or I'm gone. That was not my big thing. But I got to a point where I was doing that. Where I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. And he was like, hey. I don't know where my kids were. I think they were spending the day with my mom or something. He's like, do you want to go to a bowling alley? And I'm like, what? Okay. So we went bowling. Lo and behold, there's this great little bar on the side of the bowling alley. And we shifted from bowling to having a few beers and just, again, letting it all out.
Yeah, talking.
And spilling. And to this day, that place is our place. We go and we have a couple beers and we just need to sit down and talk to each other and be with each other.
Cool.
So it's the bowling alley is the third thing that saved our marriage.
That's so awesome. I love that.
So we've got
the drive,
16 or 18-hour drive, an act of God, and a bowling alley.
That's going to be the title of your memoir, right?
Yeah, that'll be it.
You guys will write this beautiful book about relationships and love and marriage and all that. It's so awesome.
And that is, we actually have tossed that around, so we'll see if that actually happens.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it'd be brilliant, because one of the things that, with so much focus on us and so much focus on trying to figure out how to get us help, I think so much is lost on the families.
Yes.
Not only the children, and what they've gone through, but also, most especially the spouses and their dedication to all that, and because it's an identity shift for all of you as well too. And so that would be amazing. I think it would be wonderful.
I'd love to see somebody just really, in some of these organizations that exist, really start to build that out. I know I don't have the capability to do that. That is not my specialty. Yeah. But it really does need to happen.
The one person that I've seen that runs a really good program is Taya Kyle. Her retreats, her couples retreats, they've helped a lot of people and really is focused on that a lot. So, kudos on you, Tay. I always love promoting that program for her. But all right, so he's home. He's got this new business. He's still traveling a bunch, but at least he's around. You've had the talk at the bowling alley talk.
Everything's good.
Let's fast forward to what Blue Tide Marine is, how it came about, and then we'll get to where you guys are at right now.
Yeah. So again, it came about just in some of the relationships that were built in his final years at the command, and special capabilities and different groups and talents that they all had. And they knew they worked well together. So they said, well, let's do it. Let's build a business. And when it came down to trying to determine what it was that they wanted to do, they knew they wanted to work in maritime. And
in South Florida.
They knew they wanted to live in South Florida. So, they created the life they wanted. So that's what they did. And, they get to spend a lot of time doing some diving. They get to spend a lot of time on boats and
jumping out of airplanes.
Jumping out of airplanes and building airdrop capabilities and going to a couple good parties. So they really have built the life that they want. And I think once that all started to really pick up steam and have get on a good roll, the transition became a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because I think, all relationships require consistency, right? And if there is, even if it is the madness of entrepreneurialism and the grind, and every day you got to fight for that next dollar that's coming in, and then you throw kids into the mix that are active and in athletics, and you have two beautiful children, and they're both great athletes and scholars, and they're involved at the church, and I always love to see that. That's my favorite part. And but it really becomes this family, the next generation of that family, right? Of that, from what existed in the military to now Blue Tide Marine is that family.
It is, and I call it the Framley business because these friends who were all family now have the Framley business, and we're all involved in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. I stepped away from the corporate side, and I now handle the communication side of things.
And by the way, much better. Much better. Thank you so much for stepping in. In fact, it is always a pleasure to watch it now. Good. As before I was like, what the heck?
You couldn't tell, before it was like, what do these guys do?
Yeah.
Because, and they just kind of have to be that way. And, once we were able to tell some really good stories, it was, it took a better spin. So
well, let's get into that spin, because obviously, just a few weeks ago we had the most devastating hurricane in recorded history. And as a Floridian growing up, I remember Andrew in the 80s in Miami, and incredible devastation in Homestead. Just in the last 18 years, since or 17 years since I've been out there, there's been, I think, 9 hurricanes that have come in the area, but this one was different. And I remember with Jonna and the girls, we had prepared all the houses, her house, my house, and my parents, and I remember saying, her oldest was like, "Are we staying for this thing? When will we leave? When will we evacuate?" And I go, "The only way we'll go anywhere, because we've got a generator, we're good, is if it turns to a Category 5." And within that 24-hour swing, next thing you know, it hit Abacos, and it was the most devastating Category 5 hurricane in history. And that's when I said, we have to leave, because if it keeps coming towards us, even if it shifted 25 miles, we were going to get crushed. And I remember I waited probably 8 hours longer than I wanted to, just to make sure. And I remember the first reports coming back from the Abacos and the utter devastation that was ensuing. Can you walk us through where your whole process with this Hurricane Dorian, what happened with everybody at Blue Tide, and then what resulted from it?
Yeah, so we did the same thing. We sat there and we watched it, and you do this. I think that's just what we do as Floridians now. You sit and you watch to the very last moment, and then you're like, okay, it's time to go. I have always been somebody at this point, and we dealt with hurricanes in Virginia Beach, so I've always been somebody who was like, okay, I think we can ride this out.
Yeah.
After seeing what happened in the Bahamas, I will not wait for a 5. I'll leave for a 4. But I think the really devastating thing about it is how it just sat there, on the northern Bahamas, and it just sat there and it didn't leave, and it was really hard to watch. But I think at that point they had forecasted that turn, so we stayed. But
because you guys have a lot of friends in the Bahamas, don't you?
No,
The business connections.
Yeah,
and
there's
stuff?
they have So not in the northern Bahamas,
Okay.
but more in Andros and not Abacos. We kind of knew that they were going to be okay, and 700 islands in the Bahamas.
Right.
So we knew they were going to be good, and we knew that we were kind of safe, and we knew we were going to then shift into something that Blue Tide has been preparing for about 3 years. So the
desire to go in for disaster relief, that
Right.
type of type of nonprofit, huh?
Yeah. So as you go into speak at some of these huge organizations, how important it is. Like, I'm a true believer that every company, no matter how small or how large, has a responsibility to corporate citizenship.
Wow.
To understand that you can do well by doing good. Once you put that mentality into your business,
Into your culture,
watch what happens. And so this is something they'd wanted to do for, I'd say, 2.5 years. Mike had the opportunity to meet Rob Saravello of Tropic Ocean Airways. And Rob is a former fighter pilot in the Navy. So 2 veterans go to lunch, and I kind of picture, I wasn't there, but I picture it. Mike's like, oh, we have this disaster relief airdrop capability that I want to do. And Rob's like, oh, I want to fly stuff in, but I don't have this capability, and I don't have this capability. And it was like stepbrothers there, where they're like, did we just become best friends? That's how I kind of see it with the company.
That's totally what happened.
Yeah. And so they got along right away. The partnership started building. They knew that this was something they were going to want to do, along with Nereus Medical.
Yeah.
Who, again, some veterans who have the medical capabilities. And what they wanted to do was become a first response disaster relief organization.
Right.
So this was the opportunity to do that.
Wow.
And you hate saying the word opportunity, but it was an opportunity to help.
Yeah.
And
it's really, when you start to get into that world and explore it, and I did a little bit, because there was a time where when I stopped contracting with the agency, I was like, all right, well, I still want to continue my medical skills, continue to contribute.
Right.
And whether it was doing missionary work with a church or whatever, and you start to find there are really some beautiful organizations out there, Rubicon,
Right.
Team 5, or there's, just some amazing veteran-based companies that are out there doing this type of thing. And it's very cool that you guys were focused on that from the beginning.
Yeah, they knew right from the beginning that was going to be a part of something that they wanted to do. And with this partnership with Tropic Ocean Airways, they were really able to plan it out and build it out. And then they worked with the government of the Bahamas so that they could be some of the first people there.
Wow.
And that was the difference maker for Blue Tide, was to get in there and, be there at Treasure Key, be there at Marsh Harbor, and be able to start helping immediately after receiving the approvals. But, and
can you describe the buildup? Was it, was it kind of like a pre-deployment leave or a pre-deployment workup and all that stuff?
So that's where the success from this operation came from, is from their background.
Yeah.
They approached it as though it was something that they were planning, in a mission sense.
Right.
So, we all had roles. We all knew what we were doing. We knew we had infield operators. We knew we had 2 people sitting in the jock at all times. We knew, that we were just going to approach it that way. And some of these guys had never worked together. So you had the core of BTM, and then, Mike knew a few guys, and Bob knew a few guys, Dwayne knew a few guys, and these guys all came together, and immediately it was like a seamless team that went to the Bahamas and started affecting change. It's remarkable
how that happens, isn't it? And how operators we speak the same languages, and once it syncs up, it's just impressive.
Yeah, and I think it all starts with what makes a veteran in the first place. All these people being veterans had that need to serve after service.
Yeah,
and so it really just it was immediate the way that everybody started operating together.
Can you describe what you were hearing from those first Zodiacs getting in, from those first drops, or even the first overflights? Because I'm sure they did that. What were you guys hearing and seeing? And
so there was a lot going on at once, right? So as they were first getting boots on the ground with
how soon?
The BTM guys. Oh gosh, let's see. I would say it started on Thursday. 2 weeks ago, whatever the date was. So we started prepping buckets on Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, we were in the jock at Tropic Ocean Airways, and then by Thursday, we got the approvals, and it was go. Go. Like, we were there sitting there waiting for the approvals, like ready to go, and we got them, and it was like move. And they got guys on the ground. At the same time, Tropic was running relief flights to different places, also doing recon flights, flying over the island, seeing which airstrips were available. And really, it was just this huge effort in different aspects of the aviation on the ground. The mobility that they had allowed them to make a difference really quickly.
Holy cow. And did you guys become like the tip of the spear for all of those kind of outer line relief efforts?
And that was the goal, was to be that. So yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. The guys were saying that when they would be on the ground, they started linking up with like a search and rescue team. Like, they were there, and they approached it professionally, and the way that they would anything they did when they were in the military. So they were all wearing the same thing. They all had their BTM hats. They all were. We had ATV and 2 motorcycles to move around. So people were coming and landing in some of these awesome organizations that were ready to help, and coming up to them and being like, "Where do we go?"
Yeah.
So they really did kind of take on this leadership role there in Treasure Key and Marsh Harbor.
Wow.
Which is something obviously they're all very comfortable with.
I'd say I want to know how many admirals or presidents Mike's briefed in his life, right?
So it was pretty great, and they met some awesome organizations like Impact Now from Seattle, and like they all again started working together, for the greater good.
I love it. Let me just take a real quick break. I want to just mention my sponsors, because without them, this makes it a lot easier. I just want to talk first about my relationship with Onnit and this product called Alpha Brain, which Zulu, are you coming in to say hi?
Hi, Zulu.
Oh, hi, Zulu.
Hi. You saw me pick up the call.
All right, Bubba, go lie down. Oh, here he comes. You want some Alpha Brain, buddy? You need it. No, he's like, I need a spleen, not Alpha Brain. Get out of here. Go. So, one of the things I just love about Onnit is Aubrey Marcus's commitment to total human optimization. And God knows, after enough concussions and blast injuries and just beating I've put on my brain, to find a product that really enhances my ability to have that memory, to improve my focus throughout the day, has just been such a godsend for me. There's so many products out there nowadays that talk about, the improvements, but they're laden with chemicals. They're laden with stuff that isn't necessarily the best that you can ingest or put into your body. I also have gut issues from my past as well too. That's why I use their gut health product as well. But, when I first started taking Alpha Brain a couple years ago, it just, that one, wake up in the morning, my glass of water, my Alpha Brain capsule, And I just found that my mental alacrity was so much better, was so much more focused throughout the day. It was the little difference that I needed. And as I get older and older, and my beautiful fiance continues to say is, thank God you take Alpha Brain, because otherwise you wouldn't remember shit. Anyways, so go to onnit.com. That's ONNIT.com. Check out Alpha Brain. Tell them Froglogic sent you, and you'll enjoy it. My second sponsor I want to talk about is my second sponsor is Wise Company. Now, if you're a prepper in any way, shape, or form like I am, and obviously I want to talk to you, BTM, about oh my God, dude, it's the best there is, I'm telling you. And it was so funny. Jana's the first thing she said when I scheduled you for the show. She's like, did you tell them about Wise Company and helping with the relief and all that? And I'm like, oh, I should do that.
I need to know more.
Yeah. So Wise Company out of Utah, American company, man, one of the best companies out there in terms of prepper food, freeze-dried prepared food, 25-year shelf lives. They have these incredible camping meals straight out of the pack, all delicious flavors, way better than any MRE you've ever eaten. I'm telling you. And I know you've eaten a couple of those. Forcefully.
Yes,
you want to know what I'm eating over there all the time, right? Well, I'll tell you what, Wise Company makes great products. They have great food. And the biggest thing that I've received since I started using, and I've always had long-term food products in my house as a result of my time in the teams at the agency and being prepared for the worst possible catastrophes, i.e. a Category 5 hurricane. And I'll tell you what, I had my rifles in the back seat.
Yeah,
I had my 2 Wise food buckets to take care of the family for at least 3 weeks. Yeah, and it's a no-brainer. And the peace of mind that you receive with Wise is an incredible opportunity that no one should pass up on, because we don't know when the next hurricane's coming. We don't know the next earthquake. We don't know the next wildfire. We just don't know when the next act of God is going to shift our perspective. So it's critical that you and your family are prepared and taken care of. So head over to wisefoodstorage.com. That's wisefoodstorage.com. In your promo code, put in Froglogic, and you will get 25% off any product you buy. That's 25% off any and all product you buy. There's a 90-day full money-back guarantee and free shipping on anything you do. So head over to wisefoodstorage.com, promo code Froglogic, and get you 25% off. And most of all, have that peace of mind. So be ready and be wise. Sorry. Thanks, B.
No, those need to go in their packs next time. That's for sure.
I tell you what, what I can do is I can get you on the phone with the CEO of the company who's I'm friends with, and I'm sure he will be all over that. I mean, It would be something that, that's the kind of guy he is. He would love it. So, sorry for the interruption.
No.
Do you have a particular story that's been told by someone that was on the ground, whether it's Mike or someone that just really can summarize the magnitude of devastation that the Bahamas has gone through?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we were so fortunate to kind of help some of these stories along because of that partnership with the government and getting us in there, and then Global Empowerment Mission and helping us get there. To be a part of the stories is really incredible. And the one that sticks out the most is the story about a man named Elaine. And Baker's Bay there is a beautiful area, for some folks who actually live there. They have these beautiful homes there. And Elaine did not get necessarily he decided to dedicate himself to helping out there where he works. So during the storm, he was there while his teenage son was in Marsh Harbor. So here this guy is afterwards. He's running gas cans to people and making sure that the people there have what they need. And he sees BTM and their boats, and he's telling the story about how he stayed there for the hurricane, but his son was in Marsh Harbor. And he passed away, and he has to go pick up his body. Because he hadn't heard from him. He hadn't heard from anybody. He asked BTM if they could get him to Marsh Harbor on the boat to go, recover his son's body. So obviously our guys are like, we're there for you. Let's plan, let's get on the boat. And 30 minutes before he gets on the boat, he gets a call that his son was alive.
Oh my gosh.
And so what went from this, recovery effort and getting him to Marsh Harbor turned into like a reunion effort. And that is something that will stick with the guys like forever. I mean, this experience for so many of them was incredible because they were going in to save lives.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what their impact was going to be.
And what a difference of a few years, right?
Right.
And you spend so much of your life on the other side of that, right? And rightly needed and profoundly necessary in the world that we live in. But now to have this opportunity to start saving lives. What was it like when they would describe this feeling? Was it almost as if they were speaking a new language almost?
Yes and no, because again, we talk about that need to serve and do something that's bigger than yourself. And I think almost in a way when you would hear them tell the story, because they would come in and immediately want to tell you stories. In a way, it was therapeutical. It had an impact on them in a sense that they knew they were helping people. I mean, in a short amount of time, there were almost 38 patients or 30 patients almost that they saw.
Yeah, do you have some numbers for us?
So like 30 patients that they saw. They participated in 4 medevacs, making 4 medevacs happen.
Wow.
And they did 6 clinic surveys with Nereus Medical. So that was in the first 2 to 3 days that they were there.
Are you kidding me?
So it was something for them that was, again, therapeutical. And when they would come back and they'd start telling you about it, they, obviously they were ready to be home, but they didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
That was, every single one of them said, I didn't want to leave.
It's so interesting when you start doing work like that. It's so much different than what we used to do, right? Because there's a whole new platoon coming in. The infrastructure's in place, and unless you're doing these crazy fob stuff where you're starting a new base or whatever, which always is difficult. But for the most part, you're just recycling. You're coming through. You're continuing the mission that's already been laid out. But in this, man, if when you're exhausted, your base supplies, you've exhausted your gas, you've got to go back and refit and get ready and sleep. Yeah. And there's nobody there.
Yeah. So that was the beauty of what they did and implementing their experience. There were fobs. We had Fob Bob and Fob Obi. There were fobs. I was in the jock. We had sat phones. We had InReach. And they were telling you exactly what they needed. And because we had these incredible partnerships, again, Tropic and also Skydive Suffolk. Skydive Suffolk brought in the Sky Van, the caravan.
How'd that get involved? How'd they get involved?
From our relationships up in Hampton Roads.
Okay.
And so they were amazing. I mean, amazing. They were bringing in the mobility. We got 2 new ATVs on the ground there while we were there. They were bringing in, barrels of MoGas so that they could keep running. They were bringing in not only relief supplies, but, all of the food and everything that the guys needed to keep going, but also to help supply what became their man camp of 33.
Wow. So
they went in maybe a team of 10 and grew to 33 because people kept coming to them saying, where do we go? What should we do? Right. And, it's kind of Suffolk, man, they were awesome. And then they helped with the first airdrops as well. So
right.
So we approached it the way they approached everything else in their past. So the fobs, the jock, all of that allowed this to be a successful operation for 5 days with them in field.
Wow.
Yeah.
One of the things I think, when you hear about disaster relief, I think a lot of times people have these impressions of it's always inland and it's always it's away, but if you look at the devastation in the last 20 years, the grand majority of that has come on coastal areas,
right? Yeah.
And really there aren't a lot of organizations that can operate in the water, and it really sets you guys up for a unique possibility. Is there Is there plans to continue to develop this? I mean, do you want to
Yes.
grow it into a worldwide organization, or where are you guys
Yeah.
at after this experience?
So that's the joy of being partnered with Global Empowerment Mission. I mean, they've done work in Haiti. They're doing work with the forest fires and things like that. So they have these capabilities in place, and they've already got this organization and this network. However, I think we'll also, in partnership with them and with Tropic Ocean Airways, develop another 501 for this group that really allows us to build more on this disaster relief effort. There is no doubt. I mean, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
go.
There is no doubt in any of the minds that are part of Blue Tide Marine that this is really what they're here for.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain that. I mean, because it sounds like when I see you describe this, and for everybody on YouTube, you'll be able to see that. But for you listening, you got to see the focus in B's eyes in that moment was very intense. Did you see this transition in them? This almost it's almost ethereal, right? Like you get inspired, divinely inspired that, hey, this is my calling.
Yeah, I think, I think when you do anything well, you feel motivated to do more of it. But I just think that the magnitude of what they were able to do, and, let's not forget, I mean, that they also did, all the safety assessment and risk assessment for the first Delta plane that came in, the MD-80 that came in and took out a ton of people. And, that ended up overall being about 900 evacuations. So,
wow.
So there, the magnitude of the impact that a small group of individuals had
with these individuals,
with these partnerships.
Yeah.
And I say the small group, but I mean, gosh, the team at Tropic is amazing and huge. And if you could have all seen us, then they're all acting together like one big team. It was great. And Jem, awesome. And, it's amazing what the right group of people and companies can do and organizations in a short amount of time.
And that's what the most fascinating thing is for me. And I think so many times we hear about the really challenging aspect of being in the service. You have all these incredible skill sets, and then next thing you know, you're in civilian world, and and you not only your identity is taken from you, right? Your abilities have been stripped away because they're not applicable in the civilian world and normal day-to-day life. And then all of a sudden you have the emotional detachment from the camaraderie of the brotherhood or whatever your particular group or organization fulfills. But now all of a sudden with this type of mentality, these type of skill sets, all of a sudden that's brought back into focus. They're all applicable, and it's all right there and ready and available to do by just going out and doing this very noble deed of taking care of human beings in their worst time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was to see just the look in everybody's eyes from, day to day, even though many of us were exhausted. I mean, even those of us that weren't in the field were in the jock until, midnight. And Tropic Ocean was there till midnight. And, again, another group of, a lot of them are veterans themselves too.
Right.
So it just was affirming that, this is why we're all together.
Yeah.
This is why we're all supposed to be here. We all met, and you can't deny that, right?
Yeah, amen.
You
for
can't
sure.
deny it.
How did it affect the kids?
The kids, well, they got to spend a weekend with their grandmother at a hotel, so they, they enjoyed that. They enjoyed that. But as we move into the kind of the next phase that we've gone out of this like immediate response phase,
Right.
And we're going into a phase of helping to assist with sustainable rebuilding, and you're seeing a lot of the out islands that are not getting that heavy lift like Treasure and Marsh Harbor are getting. We're starting to focus on them. And one of the stories that comes out of that is the stories of Moores Island, which is this tiny island that has seen their population almost double because the folks that are moving out of the extremely devastated areas of Marsh and Treasure shifting over to some of these out islands. And the mobility is a challenge. So getting there with relief aid and stuff like that. And then, they're dealing with more people. The school there has 50 more kids enrolled.
Wow.
And they, are dealing, with trying to get this school back and up and running. And for my kids, they're seeing that and they want to be able to help that.
Wow.
So, it helps them to understand that if they have an ability to help somebody, that they should.
Yeah.
Kids are always watching what we're doing. So.
Oh my God. I think that's, it's funny, I think for your kids, my kids, only my oldest daughter felt a little bit of my deployments back when I was traveling overseas for the government, and but your kids got a lot bigger dose of all that. And I think the interesting thing is, so often our past lives are just our past lives, and they don't have the profound influence of real time. Whereas this type of opportunity, that sense of servitude, right? That you're actually, there's a component of the human condition within all of us that we're indentured to that need to help one another.
Right.
And if that can be a predominant influence in our children, then we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, if they're picking up on what you're doing just because you're doing it and you're not having to try to do it, then that's even better, right?
Yeah.
But their school community and their faith that they have, is helpful in all of that as well. They come from a school that wants to serve. So
what was everybody seeing in terms of what's the attitude of the Bahamians right now and the people on the ground? What are they saying? What are they feeling? What's that energy like?
So obviously there are folks who have dealt with some just horrible things. Just some of the stories for some of the kids there that were running from house to house in the middle of the storm. As one would crumble, they'd go, to another. You hear those stories and it's heartbreaking, but then you also have this incredible resiliency that they have. So I talked about Morris Island earlier, and it's, we've done multiple visits to Morris Island now, and just like a couple of things that they're doing. They've taken some of the debris and the nails from their homes that have been damaged. Not all of the homes were damaged there, but from the ones that were damaged, they're rebuilding their fishing pier, because that's how they make money, is by fishing. Right. So they're taking that debris and those nails and rebuilding their pier. And they did it in like a matter of days.
Wow.
We took in relief aid on Monday, and they asked for nails and tarps because the roof of the school is very damaged. We got off the plane, they unloaded all this stuff. We got into a car and we're behind maybe by 10 minutes. We got to the school and someone was on the roof with those nails that we brought in, nailing the tarps, and it was a student, like one of the older students, because it's an all ages school.
Right.
Those stories of resiliency right now, it's nice to see that shift, right? Because as we go into the rebuilding phase, it's, you want to be able to support, but you don't want to go, oh, let me do this for you because we're so great. That's not what we're here for. No. And that's not what they want.
No, at all. It's a much better sense of empowerment than it is about a handout, for sure.
And they definitely don't want that. And that is, the first few days were great to see what they could do quickly, what these groups of people could do quickly, but now it's really great because we're building relationships with the people there.
Immense relationships that'll last a lifetime, for sure.
Yeah.
So, man, I just, it's so amazing, not only, what you guys are doing over there, but it's really amazing to hear your story, B. I mean, you have, from that cheerleader in D.C. to who you are now and what you guys are a part of and what you've been through is a remarkable thing, that you still have a smile on your face all the time. And I always love reading in your posts. Oh. Man, it's fun. People all the time ask me, who do you follow and who do you get inspired? I'm always like, there's this woman in Fort Lauderdale, her name's B, and man, she always always fired up, and you're always finding that silver lining in life, and that's a powerful thing for people.
I consider myself lucky. I mean, you have to take time to be grateful for the things that you have instead of complaining about what you don't have. And I tell you what, this last 2 weeks has definitely reaffirmed that for me.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. Well, what's next for Blue Tide, and where can people actually come on board to support you guys? Just give us the lowdown on what people can do to help and find and follow and all that.
Yeah, so, we have a lot of folks that want to know how they can help in the Bahamas, and the best way to do that is to donate right now through Global Empowerment Mission. So globalempowermentmission.org, or you can go find them on Instagram, same at Global Empowerment Mission, and that will help us do what we are doing in the Bahamas. As for BTM, we're going to grow this thing out. We're going to make it even better and continue to help the folks in the Bahamas. And of course, they have their day-to-day jobs, right? The guys are doing their day-to-day jobs, and they'll just kind of continue doing what they're doing because they do it well and they love it and it makes them happy. And that's all we could actually ask for. But you can find us too at Blue Tide Marine on Facebook and on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, B, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here, and we'll give them one more. We are
Penn State. We got to get together for the Ohio State game.
Done. We'll go down to the Parrot.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.